Joining me now, Ben Rhodes, former Deputy National Security Advisor under President Barack Obama. He's the co-host of Pod Save the World and an MSNBC political contributor. He's the author of After the Fall, The Rise of Authoritarianism in the World We've Made. Ben, you're the perfect person to have this conversation with because of the news cycle that we're in. Some of this was lost. People either maybe didn't see it and certainly maybe haven't studied it. But I think it's really, really instructive to where we are as a country right now.
No, I think it is. And look, I think it reminds us that democracy norms, they're not self-executing. You know, I think Americans who care about democracy have been waiting for democracy itself to defend us from this authoritarian onslaught. And what we see in Brazil is it takes people. It takes institutions filled with people who are willing to do hard things. The Supreme Court in Brazil was willing to do this no matter what names they were called. You know, Lula was willing to let this go forward and support it going forward, no matter what names he was called. And look, I think it's important for us to do some soul searching here in this country, which may be uncomfortable for some. It will look astonishing to history that that line you said, Ali, that the Department of Justice waited 3 years to take up the case of Donald Trump trying to overturn the results of an election, which is entirely what allowed Donald Trump to return to office. And it was this concern over what would be said about this as partisan. It was this kind of belief against all evidence that we were going to return to some era of bipartisan comity. The lesson from Brazil is if you give authoritarians an inch, they take a mile. And so we're not going to give them that inch, particularly when they're guilty, right? The facts of this case were that Bolsonaro did foment that insurrection. And frankly, it was even worse in some cases than Trump because part of the plans included potentially assassinating Lula.
One of the things when you talk about the fact that when we look back at this and we say, wow, Brazil acted faster than America certainly did. Part of that is the idea that there is an institutional memory, a very recent institutional memory in Brazil about how bad dictatorships are, about how fragile democracy is. I often worry that we're too far from that in America. We're obviously too far from World War II for people to remember why, global military alliances are important. We haven't had to lose democracy in America. It's been threatened, but we haven't had to lose it. Does that inform why we're a little bit slow at these things?
I think entirely it does, because the reality is, if you look at Brazil, right, in the lifetime of a lot of people who are still around, you had a military dictatorship. You also had it across, the entire region. You had it in Argentina, you had it in Chile, you had it in a number of countries in South America. So it's embedded in their memory. Democracy is something that is necessary to guard against a return to that kind of autocracy that included horrific human rights abuses and excesses and obviously rampant inequality, because that's where dictatorship leads. I think Americans have taken this all too much for granted, that democracy is just something there like the weather, which again, the institutions are filled with people. Are the people going to enforce the laws? Are the people going to enforce the norms? What we've seen in the Republican Party, in the United States Congress, in our own Supreme Court, is that has not been the case. And I think that's what's been so disorienting to so many Americans is we just assumed that if someone came and tried to wreck the democracy, that inevitably the system that was set up by the founders would stop it. Well, it doesn't stop people on its own. In the same way that it took people doing uncomfortable things to try to extend American democracy, it took a civil rights movement to insist upon democracy being for everybody and not just for certain people in the United States. So this has never been easy. It's never been comfortable. Frankly, it usually takes kind of uncomfortable and creative action to extend democracy through peaceful protest and through government action.
Yeah, it's not automatically self-perpetuating. I totally get why Donald Trump is invested in the outcome for Lula. It got a little tricky when we saw tariffs, right? Like, I don't know how the courts are going to look at things like this. It's like, how do you just impose these tariffs on a country because you didn't like that particular political outcome? But the Marco Rubio stuff fascinates me. This is not, if you're not actually at threat of going to jail for trying to overthrow the government, why would you be on the wrong side of this issue?
Because this is what the Trump administration sees all these things as connected. More than the center left and the left, by the way, Ali, they're invested in the success of their fellow travelers. If you are a far right authoritarian populist, anywhere in the world, you have the support of Donald Trump. Strangely, there's not the same degree of solidarity among small d Democrats. The policy of the United States under Marco Rubio and Donald Trump is to support right-wing autocrats in Latin America. Nayib Bukele of El Salvador, who runs a horrific prison system where they disappear people. Bolsonaro in Brazil, whose son is up in Washington all the time, is quite close to the Trump people. Milei in Argentina. This is their team. And if you're not on their team, you're an enemy. And the fact that, as you point out, we're using sanctions and tools that are designed to punish human rights abusers, to punish democratically elected leaders. And the largest country, a very important country in South America, shows you what our policy is in the hemisphere. And it's not democracy and human rights. It's a very specific kind of leader that we want to be in power. And it is usually not a small d Democratic leader. They would prefer a collection, I think, of right-wing autocrats down there, which runs counter to everything Marco Rubio said throughout his career about supporting democracy and human rights. One important thing I want to say, Ali, is that Lula is standing up to this. He's not capitulating to Trump like we've seen Europeans and others do, and he's benefiting from that politically.
In your book, After the Fall, which is a really important book for people to have read if they haven't read it yet, you explore how authoritarian leaders learn from one another. And what's your take now? Because is it just learning from, or as you alluded to, it almost feels semi-coordinated, right, at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I talk about the fact that they all have a shared playbook, and we've been living through this playbook in the United States the last couple of years. I don't have to detail it. But I think importantly, they also actively support one another and invest in one another's success. What you see with Bolsonaro, you have Trump people who work for him. Jason Miller, for instance, who's a senior Trump campaign official, is kind of the flack for Bolsonaro. You've got Bolsonaro's kid being quite close to Trump's family. You've got these ties where they see that we will bet. Look, Trump doesn't like what's happening to Bolsonaro because he doesn't know if he's out of office someday, will he be prosecuted? He needs to delegitimize these kinds of prosecutions because he still is not assured that that won't someday potentially happen to him. So that's part of what's happening. And they use the same language. It's, calling it lawfare. Yep. It's talking about a radical left. It literally, if you had to Google Translate on and close your eyes, it's the exact same playbook that we're hearing now.